welcome to our Bible meditation. This reading is for January 26, 2023, and we're reading Leviticus 11, 12, 13, and 14.
And we're reading from the New King James Version. Leviticus 11, foods permitted and forbidden. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, speak to the children of Israel, saying, these are the animals which you may eat among all the animals that are on earth. Among the animals, whatever divides the hooves, having cloven hooves and chewing the cud, that you may eat. Nevertheless, these you shall not eat among those who chew the cud and those that have cloven hooves, the camel, because it chews the cud and does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The rock hyrax, because it chews the cud but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The hare, because it chews cud and does not have the cloven hooves, is unclean to you. And the swine, though it divides a hoof, having cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. They are unclean to you. These you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever is in the water that has fins and scales, whether in the sea or in the rivers, that you may eat. But all in the sea or in the river that do not have fins or scales, all that move in the water, or any living thing which is in water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever is in the water does not have fins or scales, that shall be an abomination to you. And these you shall regard as abomination among the birds, that they shall not be eaten, for they are abomination. The eagle, the vulture, and the buzzard, the kite and the falcon after its kind, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, the little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl, and the white owl, the jackdaw, and the carrion vultures, the stork, the heron, and after its kind, the hoopoe and the bat, all flying insects that creep on all fours shall be an abomination to you. Yet these you may eat of every flying insect that creepeth on all four, those which have jointed legs above their feet, which to leap on the earth. These you may eat, the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, the grasshopper after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet shall be an abomination to you. Unclean animals, by these you shall become unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them shall be unclean until evening. Whoever carries the carcass of any of them, shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. The carcass of any animal which divides the foot, but is not cloven hooved, nor does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Every one who touches its skull, it shall be unclean. And whatever goes on its paws among all kinds of animals, that goes on all fours, those are unclean to you. Whoever touches such a carcass shall be unclean until evening. Whosoever carry any carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. It is unclean to you. These shall also be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep upon the earth, the mole, the mouse, the large lizard, lizard at this kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand reptile, sand lizard, and the chameleon.
Ch- Chameleon.
Chameleon, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. Anything which any of them falls when they are shall be dead shall be unclean, whether it is any item of wood or clothing, skin or sack. Whatever item it is, in whatever work is done, it must be put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening, then it shall be clean. Any earthen vessel into which any of them fall, you shall break, and whatever's in it shall be unclean. In such a vessel, any edible food upon which the water falls becomes unclean, and any drink that may be drunk from it becomes unclean. And anything on which a part of any such carcass falls shall be unclean, whether it is an oxen, an oven, or a cooking stove. It shall be broken down, for they are unclean and shall be unclean to you. Nevertheless, a spring or cistern, which is there's plenty of water, shall be clean. But whatever touches such an unclean carcass becomes unclean. And if a part of any such carcass falls on any planting seed which is to be sown, it remains clean. But if water is put on the seed, and if a part of any such carcass falls on it, it becomes unclean to you. And if any animal which may eat dies, for he who touches the carcass shall be unclean until evening. He who eats any of his carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. He also who carries his carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. And every creeping thing that creeps on the earth shall be an abomination, shall not be eaten. Whatever crawls on his belly, whatever goes on all fours, or whatever has many feet among creeping things, and creep upon the earth, these you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. You shall not make yourselves abominable with anything creeping thing that creeps, nor shall you make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I am Lord your God. You shall therefore consecrate yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Never shall you defile yourself with any creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. For I am the Lord who brings you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the animals and the birds and every living creature that moves in the waters and every creature that creeps on earth, to distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between the animal that may be eaten and the animal that may not be eaten.
Chapter 12. The ritual after childbirth. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a woman has conceived and born a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. As in the days of her customary impurity, she shall be unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. She shall then continue in the blood of her purification 33 days. She shall not touch any hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are fulfilled. But if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her customary impurity, and she shall continue in the blood of her purification 66 days. When the days of her purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or a daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then he shall offer it before the Lord and make atonement for her, and she shall be clean from the flow of her blood, as is the law of her who has borne a male or female. And if she does not, and if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she may bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as a burnt offering and the other as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean.
Leviticus 13, the law concerning leprosy. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it becomes on the skin of his body like a leprous sore, then he shall be brought to Aaron and the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. The priest shall examine the sore on the skin of the body, and if the hair on the sore has turned white, and the sore appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous sore. Then the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. But if the bright spot is the white on the skin and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair is not turned white, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the sore for 7 days. And the priest shall examine him on the seventh day, and indeed, if the sore appears to be as it was, and the sore is not spread on the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for another 7 days. Then the priest shall examine him again on the seventh day, and indeed, if the sore has faded, and the sore has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall not pronounce him clean. It is only a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab should be all spread over the skin after he's been seen by the priest for his cleansing, then he shall be seen by a priest again. And if the priest sees that the scab has indeed spread on the skin, then the priest must pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When this leprous sore is on the person, then he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if any swelling on the skin is white, and is turned to hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh and a swelling, it is an old leprosy on the skin of his body. The priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall isolate him, for he is unclean. And if the leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy covers all the skin, and the one who has the sore from his head to his foot, wherever the priest looks, then the priest shall consider indeed, if the leprosy has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean who has the sore. It all turns white. He is clean. But if the raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean, and the priest shall examine him to be unclean, for the raw flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or if the raw flesh changes and turns white again, he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the sore has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. Who has the sore, he is clean. If the body develops a boil in the skin and is healed, then the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be shown to the priest. And if the priest sees it, it indeed appears to be deeper than the skin, and its hair turns white. The priest shall pronounce this unclean. It is a leprous sore which has broken out of the boil. But if the priest examines it, and indeed there are no white hair in it, and is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. And if it should at all spread over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore. But if the bright spot stays in one place and has not spread, it is a part of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if a body received a burnt on the skin by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the priest shall examine it, and indeed, if the hair of the bright spot had turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin, it is leprosy broken out in the burn. Therefore, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore. But if the priest examines it, and indeed there are no white hairs in the bright spot, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. And if the priest examines him on the seventh day, if it is at all spread over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore. But if the bright spot stays in one place and has not spread on the skin but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn. The priest shall pronounce him clean, for the scar is from the burn. If a man or a woman has a sore on the head or beard, then the priest shall examine the sore, and indeed, if it appears deeper than the skin, then there is in the a yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is scaly leprosy of the head and beard. But if the priest examines a scaly sore, and it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there's no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the scale for 7 days. And on the seventh day, the priest shall examine the sore, and indeed the scale has not spread, there is no yellow hair in it, and the scale does not appear deeper than the skin. He shall shave himself, but the scale he shall not shave, and the priest shall isolate the one who has the scale another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest shall examine the scale, and indeed, if the scale has not spread over the skin, and does not seem deeper than the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scale should at all spread over the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and indeed, if the scale spread over the skin, the priest need not seek for the yellow hair, he's unclean. But if the scale appears to be at a standstill, and there's a black hair grown up in it, the scale has healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. If a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of the body, specifically bright spots, then the priest shall look, and indeed, if the bright spots on the skin of the body are all dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin. He is clean. As for the man whose hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, but he is clean. He who has hair fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead, that he is clean, but he is clean. And if there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white sore, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or on his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine it, and indeed if the swelling of some is reddish white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, as appearance of leprosy of the skin of the body, he is then a leprous man, then he is unclean, and the priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His sore is on the head. Now the leopard on whom the sore is, his clothes shall be torn, his head bare, and he shall cover his mustache, and cry, unclean, unclean. He shall be unclean all the days he has a sore, he shall be unclean. He is unclean, and he shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. The law concerning leprous garments. Also, if a garment has leprosy plague in it, whether it be woolen garment or linen garment, whether it be in a warp or woof of linen or wool, whether it be leather or anything made of leather, and if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the leather, whether it be in the wrap or the woof or in anything made of leather, it is a leprous plague and shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine the plague and isolate that which the plague hath 7 days. And he shall examine the plague on the seventh day. And if the if the plaque has spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the wool, in the leather or anything made of leather, the plaque has an active leprosy, it's unclean. He shall therefore burn the garment in which the plaque, whether warp or woof, in the wool or in the linen or anything of leather, for it is an active leprosy. The garment shall be burnt in the fire. But if the priest examined it, and indeed the plaque has not spread in the garment, either in a warp or wool or in anything made of leather, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing that which is the plaque, and it shall isolate it for another 7 days. Then the priest shall examine the plaque, and after it's been washed, and indeed if the plaque has not changed its color, though the plaque has not spread, it is unclean, and you shall burn it in the fire. It continues eating away whether the damage is outside or inside. If the priest examines it, and indeed the plaque has faded after washing it, then he shall tear it out of the garment, whether out of the warp or out of the woof or out of the leather. But if it appears again in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof or in anything made of leather, it is a spreading plaque,
Plague.
and you shall burn it with fire, in which is a plaque. And you shall wash the garment either warp, woof, or whatever is made of leather. If the plaque has disappeared from it, then it shall be washed a second time, and it shall be clean. This is the law of the leprous plaque in a garment of wool or linen, either in warp or woof or in anything made of leather, to pronounce it clean and to pronounce it unclean.
Okay, Leviticus 14. The ritual for cleansing healed lepers. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose in the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, and shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave all the hair off his head and his beard and his eyebrows. All his hair shall be he shall shave off. He shall wash his clothes and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean, and those things before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering, in a holy place. For as the sin offering is the priest's, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. And of the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest shall put some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from the uncleanness. Afterward he shall kill the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and cannot afford it, then he shall take one male lamb as a trespass offering to be waved, to make atonement for him 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. One shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. And he shall offer one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he can afford, such as he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, with a grain offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before the Lord. This is the law for one who had a leprous sore, who cannot afford the usual cleansing. The law concerning leprous houses. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you have come into the land of Canaan, which you give as a possession, and I put the leprous plague in the house, in the land of your possession, and he who owns the house comes and tells the priest, saying, It seems to me that there is some plague in the house, then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes into it to examine the plague, that all that is in the house may not be made unclean. And afterward the priest shall go in to examine the house, and he shall examine the plague. And indeed, if the plague is on the walls of the house with ingrained streaks, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day and look. And indeed, if the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague, and they shall cast them into an unclean place outside the city. And he shall cause the house to be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in the unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take the other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take the other mortar and plaster the house. Now, if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house after he has taken away the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look. And indeed, if the plague has spread in the house, it is an active leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones, its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall carry them outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, he who goes into the house at all while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and he who eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and examines it, and indeed the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. Then he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, and scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the living bird, with the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet. Then he shall let the living bird loose outside the city in the open field, and make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any leprous sore and scale, for the leprosy of a garment and of a house, for a swelling and a scab and a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy.
Wow. Some long reading tonight.
Yeah. Interesting how they handle leprosy.
Yeah.
I didn't know about a house. That never
Occurred to you, didn't it?
occurred to me that there was a plague on, affecting the walls, the wood, the good grief. It's almost like mold,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
long reading. But
so
yeah, so we're done for tonight.
get your Bibles out, folks, and read them.
Yeah.
Study them. Ask the Holy Spirit, open your eyes to see and your ears to hear, so that you may have discernment when you're reading the scriptures.
That's right.
God loves you. We love you. That's it for this evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Be blessed.